Would you guys make welcome today Ben and Raelene Walker here today? You know, we're in a series called How to Be Brave. And you know, over the last few weeks, we've been talking about courage. We've been talking about faith. And here at our church, we have this core value that says we're faith-filled, big thinking, bet the farm risk takers. And we will not insult God with small living or safe living or small thinking. And this comes from Hebrews, where it says, without faith, it's impossible to please God. And there have been many moments over the last 12 years since I've been here at Crosspoint Church that we've had to take a step of faith. And I remember being in one of these really defining moments. It was when we were getting ready to come into this building. We were just a few months from coming to this building. And I was in connection with this church in Ventura called Ventura Baptist Church. And Ventura Baptist Church had been through some hard times. They were a church that used to run about 800 people. They were a thriving church with a great missions heart, but then their pastor retired. And then after their pastor retired, they went through a couple church splits and they couldn't find a pastor. And so they were just seeking. And so I actually gave them a couple pastors to look at to maybe be their future pastor. But they went about a year and a half without a pastor. And then finally, we started having some conversations together. And this church made the decision to become Crosspoint Ventura. And so we adopted this church, and we took Pastor Matt. Pastor Matt's 32 years old, a great communicator, a great leader, and he moved to Ventura to take on this new church opportunity in this brand new city. And last Easter, not this past Easter, but the Easter before that was our very first Sunday, and they had 200 people that were part of their Easter service, and it was Pastor Matt's very first service and our first Easter there. And now, this last Easter, we've had it for 1 year, this last Easter, they had over 800 people at their Easter service in Ventura. Isn't that awesome? Now, as we adopted this church, at the same time, we realized that this church had some children. And we said, hey, they are now a part of our church, and Ben and Raelene are part of the children that we adopted as well. And you say, what are you talking about? Ben and Raelene, they are missionaries to New Zealand. And so when we adopted this church, we also took their missionaries on as well. And the cool part is this, is that we already had a connection together. And so talk to us a little bit, Raelene, about growing up in Ventura.
Yeah. So I grew up at that church since I was 6 till I was 18 and then got married. But I mean, it's where I learned how to serve. It's where I went on my first missions trip. It's honestly like where my heart for ministry all began. So it's where I met my husband. And so like for me, that place has just a very definitely nostalgic to be in the building, but just a really special place for me growing up.
Hey, and today's pretty special for you guys too, because your parents drove down from Ventura and your mom is here today on Mother's Day. And I want to invite your whole family to stand. Would you guys stand today? We want to honor you guys as well. Hey, and you guys have been an instrumental piece of just our ministry there in Ventura. I know Pastor Matt loves you guys. And man, thank you for helping us just to be able to see God blow a fresh wind through your church in Ventura. So we honor you. They're heavily part of our leadership team that is there as well. So you guys met. You grew up there in Ventura. How did you guys meet?
So my family, my mom and dad were missionaries to New Zealand through Ventura Baptist. Ventura Baptist at the time was their sending church. And so they had a missions conference there. And we came to the missions conference that weekend, and I saw her across the room, and I was like, hey, how's it going?
So you guys met at church?
Yeah, church is like the first eHarmony before there was eHarmony. It's a great place to meet people.
If you're single here today, I want you to know the church is a great place to be able to meet somebody else along the way, right? Living proof. So then we met, and we dated long distance for 2 years. My parents went back to New Zealand to go do ministry there, and she stayed in Ventura, and so we dated long distance for 2 years, and then at the ripe age of 18 and 19, we got married. You let them get married when they were 18, 19 years old. You know what's crazy is Shannon was 19 years old when we got married as well too, and so we don't pass that down to our kids though. Okay, we don't let any of them know about this.
Yeah.
So this is true missionary dating right here. I've heard of missionary dating before.
Yeah.
All right, so you guys kind of hit it off along the way. And so, you know, marriage has peaks and it has valleys. It has ups and it has downs. And so you guys went through some struggles. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, 5 years into our marriage, we had decided we were going to wait to have kids for around 5 years. And right around the 5-year mark, we started trying to have kids, and it wasn't happening. And I went to the doctor, and then I got a phone call one day, and the doctor said, hey, you have a 0.01% chance of ever having kids. And it was really devastating, you know, like, because you grow up your whole life, and you envision one day I'm going to get married and then we're going to have kids, and how many kids am I going to have? And you start planning that out. But when it's something you were born with and then it gets stripped away, it's almost like, whoa, my whole life I thought something was going to happen that was never going to happen. And so then I got off the phone and I told her, and she started crying.
Yeah.
Your turn.
Yeah. So, again, I got the news. I was devastated, you know. I think as a, you know, especially being like a young wife, we were in our 20s. That's like the last thing that you think is going to happen to you. And just devastated, you know. Didn't know that was going to be our story, you know. Like, I didn't know that was going to be the journey that we were then going to walk at such a young age. And so, so then we began another process of fertility treatments, and those were unsuccessful, and we lost babies. And there came a point that I just looked at Ben and I just said, I can't do it anymore. Like,
What was the greatest challenge for you?
I think definitely, I think this day, being on the side of that's what you're longing for. So I think Mother's Day can be like a hard, but also I think the greatest struggle for me was just not knowing if it was ever going to happen. And I think just being in that space of going, God, yeah, I will, whatever you want for me, but what if what he wants for me is to never have kids? So I think definitely coming to terms with whatever he wants is best for me, and I have to be okay with that's what's best.
Ben, how about you? What was the greatest challenge for you?
Well, yeah, thinking you're not going to have kids. I think for me, I just resigned to the fact we both kind of gave up at the same time, and I'm like, well, I'll just be a youth pastor the rest of my life. I just love everybody else's kids. I've got the golf pants to do it, so let's go for it. You know? But it's like on a serious level, it was, in my mind, I was thinking, this is the insecurities I was going through. She's going to leave me. I can't give her kids. The whole time I ever knew Raelene, all of her family, all of her friends, their nickname for her in high school was Mama Ray on the cheerleading team, because she's got such a mothering, nurturing nature. And so I was just like, wow, that's like a really big thing for her, and I can't give that to her. And so for me, it was just coming to a place in my life where I realized to not take things for granted, like small things. Like I would even say to people who have kids, like, don't take that for granted, because that isn't granted to everybody. And so it was just walking through that season. And I'd like to say that like me and God went up on a mountaintop and we just, we got closer. But to be honest with you, in that period, there was a lot of anger in my heart. I'm like, God, why did you let this happen? I'm in ministry. It's not that I think I deserve better but like, cut me a deal here, man. Like, cut me a break. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So those were things that were going through my head.
All right, then tell us about the turning point. There's highs and there's lows, so bring us back up.
Yeah, well, we had a lot of friends that had told us, you should consider adoption, and I'm just going to be really blunt and real. I had a fear in my heart and an insecurity that I was going to adopt this child, amazing child, and I was going to raise them, and as soon as they turned 18, they were going to be like, all right, thank you, I'm going to go find my real family. That was an insecurity that I had. And then someone said to me, well, I hate to tell you, but they all do that at 18. They all peace out. And I was like, good point. And so then I was like, you know what? Why do I get to think that I get to have anything different, than anybody else? Life is not sure. And so that's when we said, all right, God, we're going to do adoption. We're going to go forward with this, but here's the deal. I'm like making deals with God. I'm like, here's the deal, God. We're in a lot of debt from the infertility treatments we went through. And this time I want it to be different. And so every step of the way, every meeting we have, I'm going to put it before you. Every time they tell us they need $5,000 here, $2,000 there, or in the end they needed like $30,000. We're going to put that before you and say, God, you own the cattle on 1,000 hills. You hold the king's heart in your hand. You can do whatever you want to do. And so we're asking you for the cash before we can advance.
Hey, stop right there real quick, because how to be brave. There are times in our life when we don't know how it's going to happen. There are times in our life when you can't control the future. And there are times when you have to be brave and you have to be courageous. And you have to say, God, I can't control this, but I'm trusting that you can when it comes to the finances, when it comes to the next step, when it comes to the adoption, when it comes to the job, when it comes to the relationship. And man, I honor you because, man, you said, okay, God, I can't be brave in myself, but I can be brave in who you are. Then what happened?
Yeah, so then we called Rob, who's on staff here. We called Rob. He was at another church at the time. We said, Rob, it's going to cost us $30,000 to do this. We don't know how. All we're going to do, we're going to set up a GoFundMe, and we're just going to ask 300 family members or friends if they'd give $100, and let's see what can happen. And so he filmed a video, and then we uploaded the video, and within 72 hours, the whole $30,000 came in.
Wow.
So,
I was going to say, I know Rob is really good at videos. But I also know God is amazing at performing miracles as well. And you guys have this story that you guys kind of journey. This isn't Rob's video. This is kind of your journey of when you first met. What's your little girl's name?
Ava.
Ava. Hey, and you have a nickname for her too.
Coco. Because she's full Mexican. I'm half Mexican. But we saw the movie, and I just was like, my family said, look, that's little Coco, like as a little girl. And I was like, yes. So we nicknamed her Coco.
Watch this video.
So basically, if you guys are interested and say yes, this can be your baby.
oh my gosh.
Okay. Well, we want to say yes to this.
Here, Mama. Little Ava, we're coming for you.
First floor.
Here's the team.
Got the payload. Someone smells ripe. Looks like Eva's up and about. Just wanting to look around.
Say hi to everybody.
Say hello, Eva.
Say hi, everybody.
So I have to ask the question, what was it like to hold little Ava in your arms for the very first time?
Yeah, so we were holding her, I was holding her, and the first thought I had was like, dang, this girl has a lot of hair. I was like, sorry, God, but that's my first thought. But honestly, like I was getting choked up watching it because like when you believe for something for so long and you give up on the dream for a while and then you're holding it in your hands and you're like, my God, he's alive and he does things and he does miracles. And I was having this moment with God where I'm like, God, you brought this daughter home to us. And I've only ever had a few times in my life where I felt like the Holy Spirit spoke to me in like this really bold, like a life-changing moment. You know what I'm saying? And I'm sitting there, and I felt like God said to me, the same way that I use social media to bring home your daughter to you is the same way that I want your church to leverage social media to bring home lost sons and daughters to my house.
Wow.
And I was like, I don't know what that looks like, but okay, we're going to go with that.
Wow.
And so, so then when we started going down the venue of looking at starting at a church, something I'm always saying to our team, every post, every Instagram story, everything we're doing, we're bringing home the lost sons and daughters. So
That's so cool. All right, so you guys are missionaries in New Zealand. All right, so tell us a little bit about your calling there. I mean, you're going to go to New Zealand and plant a church and start a church from scratch. So talk to us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So we had previously lived in New Zealand. I've lived in New Zealand for 9 years. We had lived in another city. So we had come back, done an adoption. We were traveling the states, and we just felt God say, I want you to go to a new city. So we visited one city, and I was determined. I was like, this is going to be the city. We show up, we spend 4 days there, and I said to Ben, I'm not sure about this city. And the next one was Christchurch that we were going to, and honestly, I was scared. I was like, this place has earthquakes. The city that we were going to was hit with an earthquake in 2011 that devastated, or that leveled 80% of the city. And I remember my mom saying to me, why are you afraid? You live in California. You've been through many earthquakes. And I all of a sudden realized, I was like, okay, that's not really a valid, fear, because I have experienced them. So we went to Christchurch, and instantly I just got off the plane, and I just felt like a peace just washed over me. And I looked at Ben and I said, this is where we're supposed to be.
And I was like, well, God didn't tell me that yet, so give me some time. We just got to the airport, okay? Cool it. Sorry. That's me and God. That's our prayer time. And so then they had this tour. It was called the Earthquake Tour, and basically we jumped on this bus, and they were going down the streets of Christchurch post-earthquake, and a lot of it still wasn't rebuilt at the time when we were touring it. And what really popped out to me was I counted. I was like 1, 2, 3. I lost count after 17, but I counted about 17 churches that had been closed down and didn't look like they had reopened. And come to find out, after we moved there were 70 churches that were damaged in this earthquake, and quite a few of them didn't actually reopen. And so when we were there in the city, I was standing outside this Catholic church that was absolutely demolished, and they had a scripture etched in the courtyard, Psalms 122. I was glad when they said to me, let us go into the house of the Lord. And I felt like God again said to me, just this moment with God, where he's like, nobody's been coming to this church for a while. Nobody's been going to some of the other churches that you've seen. I want to call your family here to start something new for the city. And so
now it's Christchurch, New Zealand, which is very confusing because when you hear Christchurch, you think that's the name of their church, but that's not it. That is the name of the city, Christchurch. Now, talk to us about your mission statement. Our mission statement is to lead people to, here, if you know it, I'm going to test you. Our mission statement is to, we got a lot of stuff out there, right? It's to lead people to find and follow Jesus. Now, talk to us about your mission statement.
Yeah, so we say that we're a church for people that don't want to go to church. Yep, that's it.
All right, so you're a church for people that don't want to go to church.
Yeah.
So explain that to me, and how did you come to this mission?
Basically, as a missionary kid, I traveled to a lot of different churches. And in my life, I've been to a little over 400 churches. And all I'm qualified to say is that I really don't like going to church, if I'm honest with you. Sorry. But I had gone to churches where the people I met at the door weren't like the Jesus that I read in the Bible. They were super judgmental. They judged you by what you were wearing. If you were wearing a tie, if you weren't, you were on a whole nother lower level spiritually. And I just had this exposure where I saw all this judgmentalness and self-righteousness. And I just really struggled trying to consolidate that growing up and figure out what my walk would look like as like Jesus. And so whenever we explain to people in New Zealand, like, yeah, we're starting a church for people that don't want to go to church, they go, that sounds like a church I would want to go to, because I don't want to go to church. And so that's when we kind of open up and just share with them, our heart for people.
All right, now you and I were talking the other night at my house. And you were like, I think everyone needs to hear the story of Jesus. And of course, I was like, yeah, of course, everyone needs to hear the story of Jesus. But you had a completely different way of saying this. You said, no, they need to hear a second time because their version doesn't look like the version.
Yeah. So all the churches I visited, I was told a story. Every single person in this room has been told a story of who God is, who Jesus is. But much of that story is filtered through their experience, right? And so what I believe is that the picture that most people get of God, of Jesus, of the Bible, when they say, oh, church isn't for me, I don't want to go to church, really, it has nothing to do with Jesus. Because when you sit down at a table and you start talking to them about Jesus and you're like, you mean the Jesus full of compassion, full of love, full of mercy, the Jesus who says, I came to give you life and to the fullest? You don't have to go to church to want a full life. And so it's kind of like this. We called the church Story Church because this is like our idea. There's a door, and behind that door is the story that every single person has heard about church, most people. But what our church exists to do is to tell them there's actually a second story. And it has nothing to do with any of the things. All the objections you have with church have nothing to do with Jesus. So let me introduce you to Jesus. Yeah.
What are some of those objections you feel like people have when it comes to the church? What's the story? What's the false story that they have?
Mm-hmm. I think we kind of put it like this. When people start talking to us, we've kind of been able to narrow it down to what it is. And basically, it's belonging. Every single human being on the face of the planet wants belonging. No matter if you live in Southern California or a remote village in Africa, we all are tribal by nature, community. We all come together. Even secular psychologists will say it's a fundamental block for humanity to have belonging. And so most churches have a 3-step process to belong there. And this is what most people's church experience has been. Believe what we believe. So say the sinner's prayer, line up with our theology, line up with our doctrine. We have a statement. We want you to sign this, do this, join the membership class, whatever. Believe what we believe, then become like us. So it's almost like, hey man, Jesus loves you and he's here for sinners. And then once you believe it, then they're like, all right, now let me tell you how you're really supposed to behave. So stop doing this and stop going there and quit hanging out with these people. And so then it's about becoming like them. Dress like them, walk like them, talk like them, use the version of the Bible that they use, all those things. And if you can believe like them and become like them, then you belong. But the moment you mess up the first two, you don't belong there anymore. Whereas with Jesus, it's the totally opposite. With Jesus, everyone belonged at the table before they ever even believed. His nickname was Friend of Sinners, and they didn't say that because it was catchy. It was slander against him. And that was his badge of honor. He said, I didn't come to be with those who don't need a physician. I came to be with those who don't. And so with Jesus, everyone belongs at the table, even if they don't believe. And I actually believe what happens is as you're in belonging, in relationship with Jesus, then what happens is you actually start to become like him before you believe in him, because you start to think, you go, wait, how can that be true? Nicodemus in the Bible goes, Jesus, help me with this. How can a man be born again? Can he go through the womb a second time? And Jesus goes, no. And they have a conversation. And then finally, there's an aha moment where people believe in Jesus. And so for us, we just tell people we're the opposite way around. So you can be an atheist, an agnostic. You can believe in nothing or believe what we believe. It doesn't matter to us. You belong here. So
that's great. All right, so you're going to start a church. So you go to Christ Church, New Zealand, where you don't know anybody, and you've got to start a church from scratch. Okay, so you start with you guys, no one else. So think about this for a moment. You move into a city where you don't know anybody to start a church. Where do you start? How does that work?
Instagram and Facebook. So we moved to the city, and right before we had moved to the city, I had followed a couple of people on Instagram, and one day one of these photos came up, and it said this person was in Christchurch, New Zealand. I was like, no way. And I Instagram messaged her, and I said, hey, like my family's moving to New Zealand in a couple of months. I would love to catch up with you. I'm totally new. She's like, I would love to show you around the city. So the first week that we moved there, we moved 8 months ago, I met up with her. She showed me around the city.
Complete stranger.
Complete stranger. And I always meet people like in public. You know, if you do meet up with
for the
people,
little kids in
you
here,
know.
don't do that, okay? For the teenagers, don't meet strangers through Facebook or Instagram, okay?
But honestly, a lot of our realm now, community-wise, is online. So I went online to the communities that, whether it's a Facebook group or different things, moms in my city, and I started connecting with moms online, and then it brought it to conversations of, hey, let's meet up for coffee, let's let our kids play together, and that's the whole start of what started becoming our launch team.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, so the Apostle Paul, okay, he would like go into a new city and try to build relationships. You guys are using a medium of social media to be able to connect with people you don't know, to build relationships, to essentially tell them the story, the second door about Jesus.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, so normally it takes like a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years. You go, you get acclimated, you try to meet people, you're always kind of trying to build relationships along the way. And then after a couple years, then you get a core group. Was that kind of your strategy?
Yeah. So the plan was to get there. We got there mid-2018, and the plan was to launch in March of 2020. And so we wanted, in between that time, we wanted to build relationships, build, connections, social networks with people, and establish all that stuff, and get the launch team to 150 people. And then from there, we could launch our church.
All right, so March 2020, launched the church. That's when you do like your first preview service. But then March the 15th happened. And for us, let me just take you back a couple months, because we have so much terrorism going on in our country. We have so many news stories that happen. March the 15th, 2019, our television screens were loaded. Media was loaded with an incident that happened in Christchurch, New Zealand, with this shooting where I think 51 people died that day. And how did that impact you guys, and how did that change your game plan?
Well, we were all resting that afternoon, and I woke up to a frantic kind of text message. My friends asking me, "Where are you? Are you at home? There's an active shooter in your area." We live 4 blocks from the mosque that was just inundated with gunshots. So our whole city went on lockdown. Ava, I went and got her. She was in a nap, and we all sat there and watched the news, but it changed our city. The way that security has changed. There's still armed guards. Our police officers in New Zealand don't carry firearms. This is the first time in our city that even in our country that we've actually seen ARs, our police officers carrying these. So for our community of people, everybody's on, it just was not, it was eerie. It was eerie quiet around our area, and God had just already been pressing on us. We had pastors in our community saying, "You guys need to start this church," and we're just like, I don't know if it's the right time yet.
Yeah, I had a mentor call me up, and he's like, "Man, you need to start this thing now." And I'm like, "No, not now. In a year and a half, that's the plan." And he's like, "No, I'm telling you." And he said, "I would just like to encourage you, Ben, over the next couple days, just lean into the Holy Spirit and ask God, what do you want me to do?" And so I said, okay. And I went down to the city center, and I was just praying. I'm like, "God, literally, I'm not joking. I am not lying. I'm like, God, give me a sign. This is what we're supposed to do." And a stranger walks up to me off the street, and he goes, "Are you a Christian?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He said, "I know it's going to sound really weird, but I just felt like God wanted me to come over and tell you, whatever you're going to do, you need to do it now, because revival's coming to the city." And then he turned around and walked away. And I was like, "Okay, God, I hear you. I hear you." And so then we stepped out in faith. My mentor was on the phone. He's crying, I'm crying. I'm like, "I guess we're doing this thing. We're going to do our first preview service in 5 weeks. But I need like X amount of money. I have no idea how it's going to happen." And then the venues, we'd been looking for venues for 6 months, and they were going to cost an exorbitant amount of money. And we had a venue call us and say, "Well, actually, we think that there should be churches in the city right now. So how does 1/3 the price of everybody else sound?" And we're like, okay, God, I think this is you. And so we started stepping out indoors, and then some money started coming in, and we're just like, it's all faith right now. It's like we still don't have everything we need to do it, but some is coming in and things are happening, so yeah.
Man, talk about how to be brave. Isn't that awesome, guys? Isn't that awesome? So last Sunday, literally 7 days ago, you guys had your very first preview service to launch your new church. And so they created a little video for us of what happened last Sunday in Christchurch, New Zealand. Watch this. From knowing no one in the city a few months before to that is pretty special, guys. Hey, I want to have a time where we at Crosspoint here can just pray over you guys. And man, I just want you guys to know that, man, through this adoption in Ventura and what God has done here, that I'm so excited to be able to be partners with you guys in ministry. And, you know, as Crosspoint Ventura is part of the family, the church isn't the building. It's not the concrete or the mortar. The church is the people. And here at Crosspoint, man, we are honored, aren't we, church, to have them part of our family, man. You guys are part of our family.